Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about the importance, or lack thereof, of GPA, your grade point average, and whether it's that big a deal or whether maybe it's not as big a deal. These days, a lot of people put a lot of weight on GPA. Now, it is an important factor, but there's a lot of people who maybe put too much emphasis on it. And I want to talk about that and valedictorians, and what if your son or daughter is not a valedictorian or don't have a great GPA? What could be their future? We're going to talk about that right now. Hi everybody, I'm Phil Black. I'm the founder of PrepWell Academy, an online mentoring program where I help rising freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors make smart decisions about high school, about college, about majors, about careers, and about life. And I have an opinion on this GPA thing. So here's the deal. If you're a valedictorian, and I use that symbolically, if you have a great GPA, 4.9, 5.0, kids with these astronomical GPAs, what it means is you are a rule follower. You are highly compliant. You work well in a system. You know how to work the system. You are typically a generalist, which means that you can do equally well in chemistry and in music. It also typically means that you're an introvert, because when you're an introvert, you typically have a little bit more time to work on your studies. You're not socializing out as much as maybe an extrovert would be. So all these things taken together would mean that typically you would have a high GPA and maybe even a valedictorian. However, does that mean that you're going to be successful? Well, I don't want to get into what's the definition of success. We all know that that's a squishy term. But a lot of people think in their minds, whoa, this person's a valedictorian, they're going to the moon. Now, there have been a lot of studies out there showing that valedictorians actually are not seen in the public eye that much. They're not on the cover of Forbes magazine. Now, of course, they do well. They do extremely well embedded in the system, as part of the system. They have PhDs. They achieve what I call safe success, because they know the system, they know the ups and downs, they know how to prepare, they know how to interact with the system and be a good person within a system, and that is all great. However, your son or daughter may not have that personality. They may not do those things. They may be more of a rule breaker. They may be a revolutionary. They may be more of a leader. They may be somebody who's extroverted, somebody who likes to get after it in different ways. Maybe they don't spend as much time on their studies, but they're creative. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes if we're trying to force our kids, GPA, 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 why aren't you going to be the valedictorian? Let's stress about it. Sometimes we're barking up the wrong tree, because there's plenty of evidence that shows that the people who don't have the highest GPAs, they're the CEOs, they are entrepreneurs, they run their own businesses, which can be equally as good, or they can be equally as successful, in quotes, as the person who's embedded in the system, been valedictorian, or had great GPA, or worked the system. So there's two different things. That's really the bottom line. There's not one path to success. So if your son or daughter is the valedictorian or has that good GPA, great. It's hardly to say that that's anything wrong with that. But if they're not quite up to snuff, don't stress out about it. Now, if they don't have a good GPA because they're lazy, they're not engaged in work, and they don't have these other things going on. One other thing, people who don't have GPAs, sometimes they're more passionate, or more very specific learners, and they dig really deep into one topic. That is not always rewarded in school. Typically, the rewards in school are generalists, but sometimes in the real world, it's messy. Very messy, and sometimes that introvert who plays by the rules doesn't do as well, because it takes grit and it takes hustle and it takes other things that maybe are not as good for that introvert, that valedictorian type. Whereas on the other hand, the person who's mixing it up, who's getting out there, who's extroverted, who's breaking rules, who's creating revolutions in the world, they could have just an easier shot to get that quote-unquote success. Now, there are people who are ambiverts, not an extrovert, not an introvert. I would consider myself an ambivert. It's pretty hard for me to get on video like this live and try to connect with people that I don't see. It's difficult for me. I'm an ambivert. I go both ways. I also was a valedictorian myself, so I feel for the side that has the high GPA. And I, at some point, was a rule follower and compliant and understanding the system. That has served me well, don't get me wrong. However, I was also a Navy SEAL, the exact opposite of that, a rule breaker, an unconventional warrior, somebody who skirts around and goes behind enemy lines and has to think on their feet and not only be the corporate guy or the corporate gal. I'm also a firefighter. A lot of times that's a rule person because you're working for a government agency. On the other hand, you're a problem solver. Things are not always going to go your way when you're in the fire department. You have to solve problems, move around things, figure things out. I'm also an entrepreneur, totally the opposite of a rule follower and somebody with a high compliance. That's somebody who's a risk taker. So you don't have to put your son or daughter in either camp. They don't have to be the valedictorian type, who's the introvert, who's going to work the system and be compliant and only do those things that they're told to do. And they're not necessarily always going to be that renegade, that rebel who's going to do their own thing, break the rules, be a revolutionary, be an entrepreneur, be someone who's going to skirt around and have that hustle. You can be both. Sometimes it's different parts of your life. Your values change, your situation changes. So keep that in mind as you're talking to your son or daughter. This also plays a role in careers. What type of major, what type of career should they think about? Which is why I love this business. I love helping kids think about which one of these camps they fall into, and is it going to be a struggle to try to get ahead if they're an ambivert, if they're an introvert, if they're an extrovert, if they're going down this road to be in this type of career, this type of college, this type of major. I love talking about it, and I love giving kids guidance. At the end of the day, there's an ability to change courses. But I want you in the back of your mind, if you're sweating the load about GPAs and thinking your son or daughter is never going to make it because they don't have a 4.8, 4.9, they're never going to be a valedictorian, rest assured, their time will come. Keep up the good work. If you like the message I'm sending out, please leave a message, leave a comment, share this with somebody who you know, who you love, who you think might like this message. I put a lot of information out at PrepWellAcademy.com. That's www.PrepWellAcademy.com. I also have a great summer goal planning worksheet. If you're interested in that, go to PrepWellAcademy.com/P/PrepWellAcademy.com/P/goals. Send me the grade that your son or daughter is in. I will send you a custom goal setting worksheet for the summer to help your son or daughter make smart goals. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you have questions or you want to push back on anything I've said, go for it. Put it in the comment below. Even if you're not watching this live, I will connect with you after the fact in tomorrow's live episode. Great to be with you, and see you tomorrow.